Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and this morning's edition for Wednesday, the 7th of December, comes to you from London. We start by looking at currencies, then we'll look at some stock markets around the world, some commodities, and we'll finish last of all with some stocks. And we start with the dollar index. This is the basket for the dollar weekly, daily, and 60-minute chart. So this is my long-term view, my medium-term view, and my short-term view. And at the moment, the long-term picture on the dollar is still very bearish, bullish, and we see here this breakout of the above this level, making new highs, testing resistance at the moment, just pulling back. We had a similar pull back about a month ago, and we see here we're below the cloud. So we do have these downside targets at the moment of about 1.7, 1.8% for the dollar. So it just does look like it's pulling back this week. If we look at the euro, we see here on the euro that we are below the cloud, so that's bearish. Dollar strength really playing through there. This is the move after the Italian referendum. We've held on to that for most of the week, but really it's going to be a case of if we go back below the cloud, these longer term trends will probably weigh on the euro when we see that dollar strength kicking back in. And against the yen, dollar pausing for breath at the moment. We see here this week, we need to break this 114.80 level to start running higher again. Sterling, the interesting story this morning. Sterling is through on the cloud, and we see here we do have this weekly and daily clouds pretty bearish. Downside targets, quite scary downside targets, but we are pulling back below the cloud at the moment. So this will lock and give us a new downside target on this column. And just as a proxy, we look at the euro, sterling bearish there in the short term. On the Swiss, it's bearish as well, and on the Aussie, it's bearish as well. So that's a proxy for sterling just starting to weaken again. If we look at stock markets, we start with the S&P 500. Held the 2200 level last night. We're just up slightly, up 0.3%. Just continuing to run here. Bullish on this chart on the short term, bullish in the medium term, bullish in the long term. So this picture is not mixed at all, really. The US broad stock market looking pretty good. Upside target of 2.3% in the short term, and some quite big upside targets around 25% medium and long term. So looks like the US stock market is going to have a good year next year. Nasdaq still needs to break this 4900 level, the Nasdaq 100. We're still bearish below the cloud here. But interestingly, this market not looking quite as good as the broader S&P, and the Dow continuing to run, looking pretty good. Upside target here of 8.3%. That's through the 20,000 level. It looks like we will see the Dow through 20,000 quite soon. And the Russell 2000 index starting to run again, making a new high. Really looking pretty bullish for broad-based stocks. No clear short-term upside targets, but lots of medium and long-term targets. Now we take a look at the futures this morning. Nasdaq is slightly up, but through the cloud. This is the more important thing. Through the cloud, not yet on the cash market, but it is through on the futures. So this does suggest that we might well go higher. If you want to watch that closer, you can go to the 1 minute chart. We can actually go and look. If you're trading E-mini, this is pretty important. We get these targets for the 5x3. We go to smaller targets still. Lots of targets here. This is the one that we're really looking at the moment. This is on the 2x3. We probably even go to the 1x3 for real micro trading. And we notice here we've got these upside targets, lots of them. The downside targets are small and outnumbered by the upside targets. So it does suggest that the Nasdaq is going to run today. It's quite interesting. If we look at FTSE 100, up strongly this morning, up 1.3. That takes us through the cloud, bullish. New upside target of 6995. Trying to get back to that 7,000 level, recovering just on that bullish daily cloud. And on the weekly, we're still bullish. So FTSE now looking pretty bright as well, being dragged up by US markets already. And we see here on the FTSE 250, we're not quite through yet, not looking as bullish as well. Big story is the DAX has broken out. DAX this morning has broken out. Really shows up on this daily chart that we've been saying for some time that we needed to break this 10,800 level. We're through that this morning, gapped up. Really interesting that we've gapped up here. New upside targets, 3.6%. 6.5% and 5.8 on the short term. So it really does look like the DAX is now going to run. This is the move in the summer, sideways, another big move just starting. So the DAX looking pretty interesting. And in fact, if you are trading the DAX short term, you can go to the 1 minute chart. You can see them this morning, just this move at the open, just gapped straight up and just continuing to rise. Press the T key on your system. Here's the first target, the 15 by 3, not a common box size, the 10 by 3, just by changing the box sizes down here. But if we go to the 5 by 3, we start to see this price action and how we've just broken out. We do have this 2% upside target, so that's quite interesting. If we go to look at some of the Asian markets, Nikkei looking strong still, not quite through yet on the weekly, but starting to move through on the price. Shanghai just a bit bearish here on the daily through, but looks like it's recovering. Hang Seng again has held on to that bullish picture. We do have these downside targets hanging over us, no clear upside targets, and we are wandering through on the daily. So Chinese market not looking quite as good as Japan. And then we see here on the Indian Sensex, we are just teetering on the cloud here as well. And the Australian market, another good night, up 1% last night. So we are just seeing the Aussie recovering through on the cloud here, just coming through on the weekly. So starting to look more and more bullish. Let's take a look at Brent. Brent crude, here was the jump on the OPEC announcement last week. Sideways move. We do have a downside target of about 3% to $52, but we are starting to wander through on this weekly cloud, starting to look more and more bullish. Interesting, notice how we move up in the first part of the year. The previous years, that's the summer driving season, the run up to that, the seasonality. We're heading into a strong quarter and we're coming through the cloud for the first time in a few years. So it really starts to look pretty bullish for crude oil prices. If we look at WTI, much the same picture here as well. If we take a look at Natgas really running. We've been saying that for the last few days. Look at that through on the weekly. These are the last few weeks with absolutely changing long-term trend upside. Here we see the daily chart bullish. We've got upside targets to 455 here, long-term 543, but short-term $4 looks like where we're headed, 406 and 401. So looks pretty good. Again, if you're trading Natgas, take a look at the 1-minute chart. We go straight to gold. Gold up this morning slightly, really struggling to get through this cloud on the short-term chart, bearish here in the long term. Maybe we're just going to find support around here, and we do have some new upside targets here, 1204, 1198, 1200 looks pretty likely, 2.2, 2.7%. And if we look at silver, silver is already through on the cloud, tends to lead gold a little bit. We've got more clear upside targets, about 4, all clustering here, about 3.5% upside potential. Bearish still on the daily, but really starting to show some moves here, and we're finding some support here on the longer term chart. So that's looking pretty good for precious metals. Copper up just very slightly, holding the bullish position, but no really clear upside targets. You need to really keep an eye on the shorter term charts, or maybe the 1-minute chart if you're trading copper. And last of all, we took at the US bond yields. Just a little bit bearish at the moment, down to about 2.26%, having had a run, but long term the picture is still pretty good here. Apple had quite a good night last night, still not through on the cloud though on the short term, and we don't have any really clear upside targets. Google, much the same picture. A lot of tech stocks just really struggling to get going in line with that Nasdaq chart. Amazon, again, just struggling to see some upside. We do have 4% upside target here, but we need to get through the cloud for it to really run. Facebook, again, just really struggling below this 120 level. Need to get back above the cloud. We do have some upside targets. And the long-term picture, we've got great upside targets. And then last of all, Microsoft, we still haven't quite got back above the cloud here either. Again, some good long-term upside targets. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.